Hi everyone, welcome back to the Comptia Security Plus course, DR Planning. Before we can plan for disasters, we need to define exactly what disasters are possible and list them in order, starting with the most probable. Sounds a bit morbid, but isn't necessary to ensure the long-term welfare of your organization. What could go wrong? Let's focus in on the server room in the beginning of the chapter as our scenario. As you remember, we have 9 servers, networking equipment, a PBX, and a few workstations, a pretty typical server room for a mid-sized company. Keep in mind that larger organizations will have more equipment, bigger server rooms, and more to consider when it comes to DR planning. Disasters can be divided into 2 categories, natural and man-made. Some of the disasters that could render your server room inoperable include the following. Fire. Fire is probably the number one planned for disaster. This is partially because most municipalities require some sort of fire suppression system, as well as the fact that most organizations' policies define the usage of the proper fire suppression systems. We discuss protection and fire in more depth, Chapter 17, Social Engineering, User Education and Facilities Securities. But for now, the 3 main types of fire extinguishers include A, for ash fires, B, for gas and other flammable liquids, and C, for electrical fires. Unfortunately, these and the standard sprinkler system in the rest of the building are not adequate for a server room. If there was a fire, the material from the fire extinguisher, the water from the sprinkler system would damage the equipment, making the disaster even worse. Instead, a server room should be equipped with a proper system of its own, such as DuPont FM200. This uses a larger tank that stores a clean agent fire extinguisher that is sprayed from 1 or more nozzles in the ceiling of the server room. It can put out fires of all types in seconds. A product such as this can be used safely when people are present. However, most systems also employ a very loud alarm that tells all personnel to leave the server room. It is wise to run through several fire suppression alarm tests and fire drills, ensuring that the alarm will sound when necessary and that personnel know what to do when the alarm sounds. For example, escape plans should be posted and battery backup exit signs should be installed in various locations throughout the building so that employees know the quickest escape route in case of a fire. Fire drills and other safety drills should be performed periodically so that the organization can analyze the security posture of their security plan. Flood. The best way to avoid server room damage in the case of a flood is to locate the server room on the first floor or higher, not in the basement. There's not much you can do about the location of a building, but if it's in a flood zone, it makes the use of a warm or hot site that much more imperative, and the server room could also be flooded by other things such as the boilers. The room should not be adjacent to or in the same floor as a boiler room. It should also be located away from other water sources such as bathrooms and other sprinkler systems. The server room should be thought of 3-dimensionally. The floors, the walls, the ceiling should be analyzed and protected. Some server rooms are designed to be a room within a room and might have drainage installed as well. Long-term power loss. Short-term power loss should be countered by the UPS, but long-term power loss requires a backup generator and possibly a redundant site. Theft and malicious attack. Theft and malicious attack can also cause a disaster. If the right data is stolen, physical security such as door locks, access systems, and video cameras should be implemented to avoid this. Servers should be cable locked to their server racks and removable hard drives if there are any are used should have key access. Not only does a security administrator have the task of writing policies and procedures that govern the security of server rooms and data centers, but that the person will often have the task of enforcing those policies, meaning muscle in the form of security guards and dual class technician guards, or by otherwise having the right to terminate employees as needed, contact and work with the authorities, and so on. Loss of the building. Temporary loss of the building due to a gas leak, malicious attack, inaccessibility due to a crime scene investigation or a natural event will require personnel to access a redundant site. Your server room should have as much data archived as possible, and the redundant site should be warm enough to keep business running. A plan should be in place as to how data will be restored at the redundant site and how the network will be made functional. Disaster recovery plans, DRPs, should include information regarding redundancy, such as sites and backup, but should not include information that deals with the day-to-day operations of an organization, such as updating computers, patch monitoring and audits, and so on. It is important to include only what is necessary in a disaster recovery plan. Too much information can make it difficult to use when a disaster does strike. Although not an exhaustive set, the following written disaster recovery policies, procedures, and information should be part of your disaster recovery plan. Contact information. You should contact who you should contact if a disaster occurs, and how employees will contact the organization. Impact determination, a procedure to determine a disaster's full impact on the organization. This includes an evaluation of assets lost and the cost to replace those assets. Recovery plan. This will be based on the determination of disaster impact. This will have many permutations depending on the type of disaster. Although it is impossible to foresee every possible event, the previous list gives a good starting point. The recovery plan includes an estimated time to complete recovery and a set of steps defining the order of what will be recovered and when. It might include an after action report, AAR, which is a formal document designed to determine the effectiveness of a recovery plan in the case that it was implemented. Business continuity plan. A BCP defines how the business will continue to operate if a disaster occurs. This plan is often carried out by a team of individuals. A BCP is also referred to as a continuity of operations plan, COOP. Over the years, BCPs have become much more important, and depending on the organization, the BCP might actually encompass the entire DRP. It also comprises business impact analysis, the examination of critical versus non-critical functions. These functions are assigned two different values or metrics: recovery time objective, RTO, the acceptable amount of time to restore the function, for example, the time required for a service to be restored after a disaster, and recovery point objective, RPO, the acceptable latency of data, or the maximum tolerable time that data can remain inaccessible after a disaster. It's impossible to foresee exactly how long it will take to restore service after a disaster, but with the proper use of proper archival, hot, warm, cold sites and redundant systems, a general time frame can be laid out, and an organization will be able to decide on a maximum time frame to get data back online. This is in effect is IT contingency planning, ITCP. Some organizations will have continuity of operation planning group or crisis management groups that meet every or so often to discuss a BCP. Instead of running full-scale drills, they might run through tabletop exercises where a talk-through of simulated disasters in real time is performed, a sort of role-playing, if you will. This can save time and be less disruptive to employees. But it is more than just a read-through of the BCP. It can help to identify critical systems and mission-critical functions of the organization's network, as well as failover functionality and alternative processing sites. It can also aid in assessing the impact of a potential disaster on privacy, property, finance, the reputation of the company, and most importantly, life itself. Copies of agreements, copies of any agreements with vendors, of redundant sites, ISPs, building management, and so on should be stored with the DR plan, disaster recovery drills and exercises. Employees should be drilled on what to do if a disaster occurs. These exercises should be written out step by step and should conform to safety standards. Hierarchical list of critical systems and critical data. This is a list of all mission essential data and systems necessary for business operations, domain controllers, firewalls, switches, DNS servers, file servers, web servers, and so on. They should be listed by priority systems such as client computers, test computers, and training systems would be last on the list and not listed at all. You should also include somewhere in the DRP some geographic considerations. For example, are there offsite backups of virtualization in place? What is the physical distance to those backups and virtual machines? And are there legal implications? For instance, are the data sovereignty implication, meaning will it be difficult to gain access to data and VMs stored in a different country based on the laws of that country? Generally, the Chief Security Officer, CSO, or high-level executive will be in charge of DR planning, often will help of the Information Systems Security Officer, ISSO. However, it all depends on the size of the organization and the types of management involved. That said, any size organization can benefit from proper DR planning. This information should be accessible at the company site, and a copy should be stored off-site as well. It might be that your organization conforms to special compliance rules. These should be consulted with DR when designing a DR plan. Depending on the type of organization, there might be other items that go into your DRP that go into your DR plan. Chapter summary. This chapter defined in the strictest sense how to protect against potential failovers and how to recover from would-be disasters. Redundancy of data, services, and power is your best bet when it comes to the failover of equipment and service. Data archiving and procedural planning are vitally important considerations when you are preparing for the unlikely scenario of a disaster. Any single point of failure is a bad thing. In a systems of parts, that single point will cause the entire system to fail. It's common knowledge that hard drives will fail, power supplies will fail, power will fail, networking connections will fail, and so on. If you run your systems long enough, a failover will occur over enough time. The probability becomes 100%. It's the redundancy that can save you. RAID systems and clustered servers for data, multiple power supplies, UPS devices and generators for power, multi-homed servers, and multiple internet connections for the networking of data, even entire secondary work sites and people waiting in the wings to take over when necessary. All these things can provide for a redundant IT infrastructure, but be wary, too much redundancy might blow your IT budget, leaving you little for maintenance, future planning, and disaster planning. Although the chances of a disaster are slim, they do happen. The list of possible disasters in this chapter is not complete one either, but it shows the more common tragedies you might encounter. The prepared organization will have a well-defined archival plan that should include a minimum of tape backup that is stored offsite that protects the bulk of the data, but a DR plan is necessary to protect the employees, servers, and other equipment as well. And in the case of a loss of a building, a backup worksite becomes imperative. Many companies will have one person who spearheads the development of a DR plan, but it should be reviewed and mocked up by a group of people. When one person always ready to succeed, the DR plan developer, in case that a person leaves the organization. So I'm going to leave it here today for this video. If you like listening, please consider like, sharing, and subscribing. Thank you.